Hello, everyone. I'm Brenda Tucker-Jeffries, relationship coach, and I want to thank Mike Adiyamo and Teach the Teachers for giving me the opportunity to be here with you today and discuss the topic of relationships in the workplace. I'm going to take you on a journey to share my experiences in the two different career pathways that I've had in my life, in order to demonstrate to you that it really doesn't matter what industry you're in or what organization you're in, that in order for an organization to be successful, run efficiently and effectively, I believe there's one thing that it must have. And that one thing is teamwork. Something that you all participate in on a daily basis in your interactions with your students, parents, other teachers, administrators, and school owners. I want to thank you for your service and ask you, are you ready to go on this journey? Okay, here we go. It was 1971, and I was a senior in high school in my favorite class, which was office occupation. This class was designed for students who hadn't really made a decision as to whether or not they were going to go to college or work after they graduated. And it taught us things such as typing, stenography, how to prepare for an interview, and how to dress for an interview. So happened that a job became available because we were able to work only a certain amount of hours while we were in high school, 3 days a week, normally 2 hours a day. And this job opened up at Continental Bank, which was one of the major banks in downtown Chicago, Illinois. So I ended up in the typing pool for my first part-time job. And I liked it because I got to meet a lot of different other typists from different parts of Chicago. But my first full-time job came about right before graduating from high school, because the federal government was actually coming into the high schools to recruit students to work full-time in the various departments within the federal government. And at the time that I went on my interview, I was chosen and hired into a position in the Agency of Public Health Service, which was at that time under a cabinet level department that was the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. So here I am on my first full-time job as a receptionist / clerk stenographer. So I'm loving it because I get to use my skills of typing and steno, and because of the young lady that I meet who becomes my first role model, who orients me to the things that I need to know working in this full-time job. She lets me know what time I'm supposed to be there, what time I get to leave, when I can take my break, when I can take my lunch, how to properly greet the clients that are coming in, how to direct them to where they need to go, She also teaches me how to prepare travel vouchers and keep time so that the employees that I'm responsible for get paid when they should get paid every 2 weeks. So she was my first role model and my first concept of what teamwork was all about, because the two of us were definitely a team. She worked on another team and so did I, but my first team was with her. So one day she came to me and she said, "Brenda, girl, you wear the sharpest outfits. If you want, you could probably be a fashion designer. However, they are not appropriate for the office." And she saw this look on my face and she understood that I knew nothing about what she was talking about. So she went on to explain. She said, "I know that the outfits that you wear were probably what you were wearing at school, and that was okay there, but it's not appropriate for the office because you're the first person that someone sees when they come to this office, and so you're representing the office now, and your attire has to be appropriate. And by that, I mean that the outfits that you wear are sharp, but they're distractive to some of the staff, and they can't do their work." And she went on to say that, "I know that you don't know this, but they're looking at you in ways that they should not be looking at you. So you need to change your wardrobe." So I said, okay. But not only did she warn me about it, she actually took me to the places that she went and did her shopping. And she dressed professionally every single day. She took me to Burt Miller's. She took me to Fashion Plate, which were places I had never heard of and never shopped in. So, needless to say, I got my wardrobe together. We continued to work together, and it became such a great thing for me that later on, some positions opened up, and I was able to go on an interview for a promotion into a secretary position. And now this position was in a totally different office. It was in the office of the regional director, who was over all of the other agencies that were in that department. So I wasn't working for him, but I was working for his deputy. And I really enjoyed that job because it taught me an awful lot about the interactions of all the agencies within the department. So one day, my boss called me into the office and he said, "Brenda, I need to talk to you about something because I don't want anyone else to tell you this first." So I said, okay. And he said, "Do you know how the hiring process works?" And I said, "No, not really." So he went on to explain. He said, okay, for instance, in the job that you applied for, once we opened that vacancy up, everybody who wanted to got to apply. And then all of those applications had to be evaluated. A score was given to them, and the top 5 individuals we had to interview, and we did that. Excuse me a minute. In the U.S., I still have a telephone that rings when I don't want it to. So we interviewed all of the top 5 candidates, and I, as the hiring official, made the decision to hire you instead of the other 4. But before I did hire you, I had to let everyone else know that they were not hired. Someone else was. So everything was fine until one day, an individual who had gotten an interview and was one of the 5 top candidates decided that I only hired you because you were the youngest of the group, number one. And number two, you could not possibly have the most experience, more than anyone else that was there, and especially not more than her, because you didn't have the seniority, and therefore she filed an EEO complaint. But he said, I'm telling you this just because you need to know, but you don't need to worry about it because I followed the process and I'm going to take care of it. So I said, okay, and went back to my desk and started working. So everything was going fine until the day that my boss was offered an opportunity to head up a new agency within this department. And he worked so well with so many of the staff that many of them decided they were going to go with him. And I thought about it. I wanted to go, but then I said to myself, no, I'm not going to go because I don't want that same thing to happen again. I didn't like the way that it happened. I couldn't control the way that it happened, but I didn't want him to have to deal with that again. So I didn't take advantage of that opportunity, which reminded me of what someone had told me before, that Brenda, you play it too safe. In order to get ahead in life, you're going to have to take risks, but I see that you're risk averse. And I said to you, okay, yeah, I understand. So I let that opportunity go. But a little later on, another opportunity came about because I had decided to stay in that office, but I wanted to go to junior college and take this data processing class. So I'm in this class getting to know the other individuals that are in the classroom, and I strike up a conversation with this young lady, and she's about maybe 30 years old, and she's informing me that she's about to get married, and therefore she won't be working in this position that she has anymore, but she thinks that I might be interested in it. So I applied for the position and I did get it. So I took advantage of that opportunity. This was in an office called Student Financial Assistance, and it was an office of only 3 people. The director of the office, the administrative officer, and myself. So I worked directly with them, but I had another responsibility and duty as a timekeeper for a group of employees who were collection agents. And they were responsible for collecting payments from individuals who had taken out student loans but were falling behind, so they were calling them to try to collect that money. So since I was, their timekeeper, I got interested in the work that they did and found out that they were a very special group because they were the group within this agency that was allowed to work overtime whenever they wanted because the workload was so far behind. So one day I decided, wow, I would really like to do that. And I'm single, I don't have any kids, and I've got some time on my hands. So I volunteered to work overtime. But my boss told me that it wasn't appropriate for me to do that because I worked for the head of the office. And it wouldn't look right if I went over here and worked with this group of people. So I thought about it for a while and I said, yeah, he's probably right. But I began to believe that I wasn't really in the place that I wanted to be in, doing the work that I wanted to do, because I was really interested in that other work. So I started looking around for another position. One opened up. It was a grants management assistant in another office. I applied for it, got an interview, but really didn't hear anything from the hiring official for a long time. So in following up, for the first time I called and they said, well, yeah, we're still working on that, but we'll get back to you when we make a decision. Okay. Another couple of months went by. I called again. No, we still haven't made a decision, but we haven't forgotten about you. The third time I called, yes, we made a decision, but we haven't let the other individuals know. And as soon as we let everyone know, you'll know. Okay, so I didn't bother them anymore. So I got that position. And when I showed up in the office, I realized that this is my first supervisory position. I'm actually supervising staff that are still in high school on one end. The other end, I'm supervising an individual who is a mature adult, a senior who's about to leave the workforce, and others that are in between. And I could tell by my first interactions with them that they were leery. And they felt that, first of all, they didn't know me. They didn't know where I came from. And they didn't know how it was going to work out. So they didn't trust me. So I had to strike up a conversation with each and every one of them so that they can become comfortable with me and trust me. And know that even though I was hired as the supervisor, I'm going to be there to help them do the best job that they can do. But also, I'm going to be there with them in the trenches when they needed me. Because they had such a heavy workload at certain periods during the year where we had to send out all these grant applications. And there were times when the documents that we needed to send out weren't available, so we had to either go out and have someone print them or commandeer all the Xerox machines in our offices and make the copies ourselves and put the grant applications together, because they had to go out by a certain date. They had to be back from the potential grantees on a certain date, and if they weren't, we couldn't accept the application. So when they had to work overtime, I worked overtime with them. And eventually, I won them over. From there, I ended up being able to get a job at the professional level in the office as a grant specialist, which was a job where you had to work with the grantees once they obtained the grant to help them understand the requirements for their budget, to help them understand the conditions that were placed on the grant. And I actually got a chance to work with them on the telephone to talk to them about their program and how they were running it. So that was very interesting because every program was different. We had a primary care program, we had a family planning program, a maternal and child health program. So I really liked that job. And it was not a supervisory job. So I'm no longer supervising the clerical staff. I'm working with the professional staff. All work and no play makes Jack or Jackie a dull person. So concentrating on building business relationships is not the only thing that you need to be concerned about. You must have some play involved somewhere in order for people to get more comfortable with one another. And one of the things that I truly enjoyed while I was working in that office was the time between Christmas and New Year's, where we would have a Christmas party for everyone that was still in the office at that time, because not everybody believed in Christmas. there were a diverse amount of cultures in that office. There were over, in that agency, there were over 200 people in it at one time. So some of them would take their holidays between Christmas and New Year's and travel. Others would take their holidays to be at home because they had kids in college that were coming home for the holidays. And then there were those of us who came to work before Christmas, and we would plan the Christmas party the week before Christmas on a Wednesday. And everyone that was going to participate in the party either had to cook a cultural dish, purchase a cultural dish, or contribute $15 so that the staff that was designated to go out and purchase items that were needed, such as paper plates, utensils, napkins, cheese tray, pop, juice, what have you, whatever we needed to fill the menu, everyone was going to contribute. And this party would take place on a Wednesday because we were having such a good time and we had so much food that it allowed everyone there to have lunch on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And that's how we got to socialize with a lot of the people that we normally didn't get a chance to work with. So remember to take care of your social relationships on the job also. So the next job was that of grants management officer, which was the director of the office that I was in. And how I got that job was one day the person that was in that position got the information that because the administration had changed at the top nationwide because of the election of a new president. When in the US, when we get a new president, they get to bring in their own administration and their own ideas, which is rightfully so. So normally a lot of things down the pike began to change and programs change. And at this particular point, someone had determined that they no longer wanted the office that we worked in. So they were dissolving the office. So my boss decided to leave. And when he left, they gave me the opportunity to be the director of the office. And once again, there was an employee in the office who I had worked with as a colleague who was determined to not let me have that position peacefully because she didn't believe that I deserved it or I was as qualified as she was. But somehow I just didn't let that bother me and I continued to move forward. So by the time they figured out what to do with the rest of us, because we no longer really had a job, they decided that we could decide where in that agency we wanted to go and which job we wanted to have. And all of us decided to go over to the other side of the agency and work on the programmatic side. It wasn't what we really wanted, but it was what we had to deal with because we had families that we had to feed. So that side was changing also drastically. And it got to the point where they were changing the program nationwide. And the decision was made that the managers in the office were going to take a look at the workload, the annual workload, divide it into quarters, and assign team leaders that would go out and do a performance review of the grantees. Once they assigned the team leaders, they were going to allow the rest of the staff to bid on which team leader's team they wanted to be in. And what happened many times was that I, as a team leader, had so many people who wanted to be on my team that they had to cut it off at a certain point and then reassign them somewhere else. So once we learned what our new roles and responsibilities were going to be, we had to begin meeting with the grantees to inform them of what it is we're now required to do and get them on board. So there were a series of weekly meetings we had to have with them to let them know what to expect from us and what they could expect and what we could expect from them. So we got comfortable with them, came up with an agenda, and went out on this performance review. And sometimes it would last a day, and sometimes it would last 3 days, depending upon how big the project was. And I love the fact that we got comfortable with the grantee before we went out. And while we were out there, all of the things that we got to do, because we actually got to see how the programs work, not just on paper, but in reality. And we got to meet with the staff, the board of directors, the clients. The part that I didn't like was when we came back to the office, because the team that went out consisted of the staff members, but then we had to hire specific individuals such as physicians, nurses, dentists, CPAs, board of directors for their specific expertise. And everybody that went out had to write a report, a part of the report. So my job as a team leader was not only to manage them while we were in our weekly meetings, on site, and when we got back to write the report, but to take all these different reports and compile them together to make it look like one person wrote the report. And that for me was difficult because no one in the office had been trained as an editor. And I forgot to mention that team leaders had responsibility with no authority. We were not supervisors over anyone. So at some point, I came to the decision that things weren't really working out the way I thought they should. But I wasn't sure what I was going to do. So one of my colleagues who had been a manager before but was no longer in a management position came to me one day and said, "Brenda, I just got to tell you this. You know, the recommendations and suggestions that you give to the managers regarding what's going on in the workplace are great. But if you want them to take you seriously and implement any of those things, you gotta give it to somebody else to take it to them, because they're not gonna take it from you." And my heart was hurt, because this was a place that I was loyal to and loved to work in, even though I was a little uncomfortable at times. So when he said that, I took him to heart, because I knew that he knew what he was talking about. And he also explained to me that the management skills and responsibilities that we learned about, you have to put them on the back burner because you're no longer a manager. And so they're feeling that you're trying to take over their responsibilities. You're used to solving problems, but that's their job now. And so I got it, and I said, okay. So by that time, I was feeling a little bit out of place and not really valued, so I decided to exit and make it a win-win situation for everyone. And that was all right. The next time I actually entered the workforce wasn't until 2015. And that was due to my daughter and her fiance planning their wedding events. and they asked me if I would help them out. And of course, I'm ecstatic because that's what every mother wants to do. They want to be involved in their daughter's wedding. And so we began to plan all the events about a year and a half ahead of time. The first event was the engagement party, and it was fantastic. Everyone enjoyed themselves, and the only regret we had was that we should have had it for another couple of hours. It ended too soon. So after that, we started looking for venues for the wedding and the reception, and interviewing photographers and DJs, and looking for dresses and so on and so forth. So we got to the morning of the wedding, and the wedding is going to be held in one location and the reception is in another. So as I get there that morning to the hotel where the reception is going to be held, it's being held in a hotel, luxury hotel downtown Chicago. I get there and start going through looking at the ballroom to make sure that it's presentable. And it wasn't, because there had been a party there that night and they were still trying to get it together. Okay, so then as I checked in, the mother and father of the bride and groom were supposed to have a suite. Well, the groom's family did. My daughter's family didn't. So we had to move into one room and then move out and move into a suite later on. Okay, so we made it to the wedding. The outside was gorgeous. The inside was gorgeous. Everything went fine. Left the wedding to come to the reception. And that's when things began to get awry. Anomalies happened that should not have. Such as, we had been informed that the guests would have to pay $20 to park. So we put it on the invitation so that they would know that in advance. When some of them got there, they were requested to pay $65 instead of $20. So when they pulled me to the side and let me know, I left the reception to go take care of that and to fix that. Needless to say that I didn't get to do most of the things that mothers of the brides get to do at the reception. So I missed out on a lot. For dinner, we had ordered specialty plates at a specialty price, and the quality of what they gave us was less than what we ordered. So the only people that know that are my daughter, her husband, and myself. So everybody else is having a ball. So that morning, my husband and I left, came home because we still had out of town guests at our house until like Thursday of that week. And before they left, my daughter and her husband came over to thank them for coming and wish them safe travels. And she told me about some of the other things that didn't go the way they were supposed to go. And by that time, I am on fire. I am so angry. There's fire coming out of both ears. So I'm trying to figure out, what am I going to do? Because I got to get this anger out of me. And I started writing. And as I'm writing, I'm feeling better and better until I get to the end of what needs to come out. And I say, it's okay now. Took the papers, put them in a file cabinet, and forgot about it for several months. Until one day, I said, no, this isn't right, because I know that this has happened to other people than my daughter and I. And they didn't let anybody know because, first of all, they're probably embarrassed that it happened. And they're angry because they're having to spend more money to fix things that should have been taken care of on that day. But I had to ask my daughter and her husband if it was okay for me to share our experiences. And they said, of course, because we don't want this to happen to anybody else. So yes, you can share it. And I thought, well, I don't know how to write a book. I don't know how to get it published. I don't know how to do this. So I went to watch something on television, and I'm channel surfing. I'm not really watching. And this commercial comes on about this organization that's a publishing company that's located near my neighborhood. And they're having a meeting. So I go to this meeting, and they're actually talking about how to get your book published. The name of this organization is the Speakers, Publishers, and Authors Association. And they're not only a business, but they're a theater. Okay? So I go there and I talk to them about this manuscript that I have, and my book is published several months later. The first book was entitled Mother of the Bride, So Your Daughter's Getting Married. And then I subsequently changed it to Mother of the Bride, Stuff Happens. So in the midst of writing this book, I became a member of the organization. And they taught me several things. They taught me how to become a published author of 2 books, because I actually have another book that I'm a collaborating author, and it is The Power Within. They taught me how to become a different type of speaker than I was, how to deliver my elevator pitch, how to speak contemporaneously, and how to become a paid speaker. So we would have monthly meetings. And once a month, we can invite guests. And everyone would have a certain amount of time to introduce themselves and talk about some things that they had accomplished or events that they had attended since the last meeting. And at this particular meeting, I informed them that I had been to this fabulous luncheon for cancer survivors. And it was held in this hotel. Ballroom was full to the rim. Every table was full. And my mother's cousin had invited her because her cousin was a cancer survivor. So they gave awards to the cancer survivors. They had vendors. They had raffles. The food was to die for. And before we left, they had a fashion show. And I could tell that everybody, except maybe about 10% of the people that were there, were very familiar with this MC and this modeling troupe. Because when the MC stepped out onto the stage, the whole place went up in applause. And by the time that fashion show was over, I said to myself, I want to do that. And I want to do that with them. I don't know how I'm going to make it happen, but it's going to happen. So as I'm explaining this to everyone in this meeting, the owner of the theater is paying attention. So a couple of months later, we're having this meeting, and he comes out and says, hey guys, you're going to have to cut your meeting short because I have someone who's interested in coming in and renting the theater for an event. And they're coming in a little bit, and they want to see if this is what they need to fill their needs. So as we're cleaning up, someone does come in, and I turn around and I see that it's the owner of the modeling troupe and several models. So they're going through the theater, they're up on the stage trying to figure out how they're going to enter and exit the stage, where the runway is going to be, and how they're going to go down and mingle with the audience. But before they leave, the owner says, is there anyone who would like to model with us? And of course I said yes. And that's how I got to be part of that modeling troupe that I'm still in to this very day. So I'm saying that to say that you really do have to have teamwork in order to accomplish all of the things that need to be done in an organization. And the owner of that theater was actually looking out for all of the members of that organization and determining the things that they wanted to do in life but were afraid to pursue. And he made those happen, not for me, but just for everybody that was there. So I want to leave you with some lessons that I learned in my building of relationships in the workplace. There are 3 of them. But first, I have to let you know that I became a relationship coach because this organization is now working on a grant program. This is the 2nd year that they received from the federal government, working with students ages 10 through 19 about life skills and the choices that they make, letting them know that their choices will always have consequences. So the 3 things that I learned and want to share with you about relationships in the workplace are: number 1, try to keep an open mind. Number 2, remember your purpose. And number 3, which is a shortened quote by John C. Maxwell, which says, "Teamwork makes the dream work." Continue with the services that you provide to your audience. You're doing a great job. Thank you for your service. I'm Brenda Tucker-Jeffries, relationship coach. Contact me on my website, which is www.BrendaTucker-Jeffries.com. I'm also on Facebook as Brenda Tucker-Jeffries and Relationships Are Us. And I'm on LinkedIn as Brenda Tucker-Jeffries. When you go to my website, you can actually order a copy of Mother of the Bride Stuff Happens. And if you're interested in The Power Within, which is a collaborative book of 10 different authors, let me know. You can let me know on that website. As well as I want you to go there so that I can give you a copy of a special gift that I designed specifically with you in mind. It's been a pleasure working with you today. Now it's time to go out and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.